Azalea watched as a mirror flooded the sky. It grew darker and darker until finally it began to turn into a navy blue, gray-green glow. "It's getting dark quickly today," said his mother, who entered the kitchen as Azalea took his last sip of tea. She was brunette, like him, with dark blue eyes, like him. But her face shape was different, which she had inherited from his father. "It's going to rain? They didn't say anything like that on TV. But it looks humid and muggy outside." She touched the window with her finger and left a smudge, like when you draw your finger across frost or rain, only more delicate. "It was supposed to be clear and cloudless," she said in a surprise. Maybe it won't rain," Azan replied. "But it is strange," he added. The weather didn't look promising, but it was already quite late, he mused. Only the sky. It was indeed peculiar. But it's just the sky. What could threaten them? Rain? He didn't want to think about it anymore. He grabbed the cup, washed it, and headed for the hallway. "Where are you going?" asked his mother. "To more," he said, surprised by the question. "Oh, yeah. You mentioned that." She replied in a way that made it unclear whether she actually remembered, whether she had even heard him say it to her. "Will you walk the dog?" "I already did," he replied. This time without surprise in his voice, although there should have been, because he had said that too. Azan put his sneakers, thought for a moment about his raincoat, and glanced at the window from the hallway, but the weather outside wasn't improving. Still, he decided not to wear it. It was summer and the weather was strange, but not necessarily rainy. If it did rain, at most he would get wet. "I'm off," he said, and left the apartment. The neighborhood he found himself in was already covered in darkness. The streets lit by the windows of apartment buildings and street lights. Anyway, he had lived here for 15 years. His whole life. He knew this neighborhood inside out, like the back of his hand, inside and out. It could be completely dark, without a single ray of light, pitch black, and he would still find his way out. He looked at his apartment building and the window of his apartment, 5th floor, top floor. In the kitchen, he saw his mother, and in a large room, the dog was glued to the window. The brown, white, and a gray mat seemed happy and embarrassed at the same time. Happy because he saw his master, embarrassed because he was asleep and didn't have time to say goodbye to him. He was only awakened by the sound of the door closing, but by then it was too late. Azalea waved at him, and he responded with a wagging tail and a bark that couldn't be heard through the closed window. The boy heard a beep and looked at the message displayed on his watch, reminding him of the bus leaving soon. And seeing how much time he had, he rushed to the stop. He made it in time and took the seat. He didn't have to push his way through. Apart from him, there was only one girl on the bus. The bus was leaving from the terminus, so many people could still get on in the meantime. But he was surprised anyway. Usually, there were more people, many more. On the other hand, the weather wasn't encouraging people to leave their homes. The girl sitting a few seats in the front of him was about 10 years old, with a nice face and short brown hair that fell just below her shoulder. "Call me when your grandmother picks you up from the bus stop," he heard a woman's voice say. Then, he noticed her mother standing behind the window. Her first trip alone, he thought, or her first trip at this time of the day and in this weather. "I will call," she replied quietly, so her mother couldn't hear her, but she read her lips. "Call," her mother repeated firmly. "Grandma needs to know to call, but so do you." "Mom, it's only 4 stops." Her mother stared at her with a reproachful and protective look at the same time. She was very stressed about her daughter traveling alone and didn't want to hear any objections about the phone call. The girl nodded and added again, "I call." Then, still staring at her mother, she leaned against the seat in the front of her and drew a smiley face on the window. And her mother responded by drawing a heart. Azan looked at the display on the bus. Parking in a minute, but the driver was missing. He looked outside the window. It was quite humid and the glass was covered with a delicate mist and dew. He glanced at his neighborhood, then at the nearby road and sidewalk, where a fast food stand stood. The fast food vendor was nowhere to be seen, although the light in the fast food stand was on. It seemed kind of empty. The driver was nowhere to be seen. He wasn't sitting in a bus, nor he was anywhere nearby. He glanced toward the park, thinking maybe he was smoking a cigarette. Then he noticed something he hadn't noticed before. The trees and plants were darker. Or maybe it just seems that way to him, but the weather? But no, probably not. Not only were they darker, but some of the plants had changed color, from green to a claret black. Here, Azalen was surprised. In the center, okay, but here they had always been green, completely green. Could Tumul have added new laser points, the kind that strike near his neighborhood? Or maybe he had turned up the power of the two old lasers and the emission had reached all the way here. He opened his phone to check the latest news. Maybe he will find some news on the subject, but since the trees started turning claret black in the places they hadn't before, there's definitely something going on. They started absorbing more poison, which changed their color. Maybe that's why the sky became so strange. From the radiation? From the poison? He started typing tumultuously into the browser, and while typing, he looked for the driver. The bus should have left 2 minutes ago. He looked to the other side where the girl was sitting. The UN's team made it difficult to find the driver, and on the top of that, the city has mercilessly increased the power of the lights. Or maybe they were broken. Because the red light coming from the traffic was blinding. The girl's mother smashed the heart on the window, apparently ready to draw something new for her daughter. The dim light was getting so intense that he couldn't even see her, and she, at her hand, under the pressure of the light, seems for a moment to be a black figure before the red light covered her again. Azalen looked at the window, curious to see what the mother would draw. A cat? A sun? What a simple drawing she will make for her child. What do you draw for the first independent journey? But he smudged the heart, then changed the face, changing it from the smiling to sad. Sad because the girl was leaving? It seems to fit, but Azalen felt a knot in his stomach. And the girl lifted her torso from the chair she was leaning on with a grimace. And one could get the impression that the face didn't suit her. The lack of a heart and a sad face look ominous, even if they were meant to convey nostalgia. It was eerie. The light began to grow more intense. What the fuck is wrong with this light, he thought, squinting his eyes. And where is the damn driver? He was getting more and more irritated. The girl approached the window looking for her mother, but she was also blinded. Completely. She squinted her eyes looking for her. Finally, not seeing her, she wanted to make contact and draw something again. She reached out her hand and Azalen realized something. It's a loop. There's no lights here. Not so close. They're further away, much further away. And they would have turned green at least once, instead of staying red all the time. The girl focused on the window, began to smash her finger again, redrawing the lost heart. The light faded for a moment, but the focus girl didn't notice. When it faded, two small oblong reflections pierced through it. And then he saw it. Azalen's heart beat faster. A vertebrae appears behind the glass. A large, long snout with glowing semicircles instead of teeth. Ears resembling horns with glowing circles on them and on its front paws. Only red, not white as usual, and bent, zigzag, not straight.